Hello, ladies, gentlemen, and deceased. It is I, Emily Sophia, aka M Mighty Sophia, here to break down for you guys at last some of my thoughts on the first half of the 7th season of The Walking Dead. So, there are indeed going to be spoilers in this review, but just in case you are one of those people who decided to ditch out on the show completely after the premiere. It was a very divisive event, of course. If I need to get your noggin moving again, y'all remember that. Or for whatever reason, if you haven't seen this first half of the season yet, I will tell you that it is actually pretty dang good. And I am, in fact, going to recommend that you sit down and just marathon it out. It's going to take you a little bit longer than usual because most of the episodes in this season fell around the 75 to 90 minute mark, which feels very excessive. And I will say that there were episodes that were not very well served by this lack of narrative efficiency. There were some times where they could have ramped up the tension, but instead erred on the side of simply leaving all this room to breathe, to put it simply. So that's always kind of a drag. But at the same time, there are a lot of good facets to cling on to, a lot of decent performances, and there was actually a good thematic cohesion among all of the different episodes, even though we spent a lot of time kind of playing roulette with the focus of the week. At some points, we would be with one colony of survivors, and then the next week we would be with a single character off with a completely different group, and that was kind of the nature of the beast. And that's something that the show has kind of verged into in the past season or two, maybe. Gosh dang, this show has been around for so long that it's kind of hard to categorize everything and look at each season as an era. But overall, I think that the ending of the season was very satisfying too, and cathartic in a way that the premiere by no means was. So I would say that if you were even remotely interested in this show, it's worth your time. I really like the direction that we're headed in, and I think that we're pretty much par for the course now. It's very apparent where they're going to go with things, and hopefully that's going to translate into a really good build and a really solid pace and structure for the forthcoming episodes. So that is where the spoiler-free stuff ends, and now I dive into the business. So once again, thank you to those of you who would watch all my episode by episode reviews. Thank you for waiting for this one. I know it's shorter and more condensed than my other stuff, but the conversation begins below. So anything I don't address, bring it up down there and we will hash it out. So this time around, this first half of the season dealt very, very heavily with this totalitarian tyranny that has been espoused by Negan and the Saviors, all of his douchebag name bearers who pillage and plunder and basically act as harbingers of oppression in an already pretty miserable post-apocalyptic landscape. So it has not been a fun time, but something that I really appreciate about this season is the fact that we can see all of these different and relatively diverse communities that have been affected by the evil of the Saviors, and to see how all of these communities' leaders have either risen to the challenge or bent the knee in the face of Negan has been really intriguing, because there's a lot of parallels to be hashed out in that regard. So the main communities that we focus on, of course, are not only the Saviors and the Sanctuary, which we get a much better and up-close look at in the episode centered on Daryl's imprisonment, and then Carl's nice little visit with, basically like young Darth Vader to the evil Emperor Negan, who tries to get him to join the dark side. So we've got Negan and the Saviors in the Sanctuary. We have Alexandria, of course, in which we have all of these different characters whose goals and objectives are incredibly fractured. Everyone is broken and dealing with the devastation of losing Glenn and Abraham and falling to the Saviors in their own ways. And ultimately, it doesn't turn out so well, but we do see this unifying moment at the end of the finale. And something that The Walking Dead really lives for is counterbalancing, over time, these moments of pure, unadulterated devastation, and then this mushy, warm togetherness of seeing all these survivors that we've come to know and love finally regain their bearings and their sense of group identity, and they all converge together to take somebody else out who's messing with them. So we get that with the Alexandrians in a big way, and we also lose a bit of dead weight in the form of Spencer's death, who, good lord, of all the minor characters that I will not miss, and do not miss, and never even once think of, Spencer is at the very top of that list. I mean, I am promptly going to cleanse my mind after I film this review. I am just going to will myself into amnesia and forget his existence in the show. Because, good lord, that guy was more insufferable than Father Gabriel on his worst days. And from what I understand, there is a moment between Spencer and Negan that unfolds in the comics. And there has been much discussion of the parallels between this season and the comics and places where they have overlapped. And that's all I'm going to say. But oh man, was it mighty satisfying to watch that son of a biscuit fall, because, good lord, I was fed up with him. The actor was fine, but the material that he had to work with was so terrible. There was nothing sympathetic about this guy. And there was, every complaint that I harbored in my heart, Negan articulated perfectly when he exposed his guts for the world to see. So, that was good. Sadly, Olivia was also taken out as another one of those token inconsequential deaths. That's another problem The Walking Dead has been afflicted with, is they have these big episodes where it's like, someone is going to die. And then we know that no one major is going to die until the next episode that is ramped up as someone is going to die. And that anyone else who falls is going to either be a new member of the group, someone on the sidelines, somebody that we've never even seen before who gets brought out solely to kick the bucket. So, sorry, Olivia, that had to happen to you. But there were some moments with her where it was like, the sniveling and the crying. And even there was a scene with Carl, which I think was in the 7th episode, where he was crying while singing You Are My Sunshine. And I'm just kind of like, okay. I'm not feeling it, but that's just cynical of me. But anyways, yeah, there's Rosita tries to employ Eugene in making this bullet for her so she can plant it in Negan to finally get revenge for the death of her beloved Abraham. Even though things kind of went south between the two of them towards the end there. That doesn't go so well. It was laughably implausible how she could have missed at that just point blank range and going right into Lucille. It was utterly ridiculous, and I'm amazed that she made it out alive. But then there was Michonne, who was going and trying to get her revenge as well, and she finds one of the Negans and ends up taking them out, and then realizing, we all need to be in this together. I was doing this for me, but it feels kind of pointless. And so everybody slowly starts waking up and smelling the coffee that Negan is cooking. And they're like, nah, that business is burnt. It's not good. It's not good enough. This is no kind of life that we can sustain ourselves on. So, super exciting to see everyone converge and kind of empowered as a collective, and even Rick in the midst of that too, because he's been kind of groveling before Negan this entire season. We had one episode that was pretty much completely dedicated to Negan swaggering around him and getting a lay of the land and doing everything that he possibly could to undercut Rick and to make him feel small and to establish himself and basically leave his scent on every square inch of Alexandria. And so it's strange because I've heard that Rick in the comics is actually all along planning to fight back against Negan, but that doesn't actually seem to be Rick's intent in this season, which is really strange. And the show is still kind of committed to upholding the glimmering heroism of Rick, but he kind of ends up stepping back quite a bit in this first half of the season. So I look forward to seeing him come back with a vengeance and really lay claim to those qualities that make us love him, those of us who do. So now, of course, we have the Hilltop, which only gets a couple of moments in this season. Goodness, sorry, there is a very loud jet that is flying right outside. You can probably hear that. But at any rate, I press on. We see how Maggie is dealing with the loss of her husband and her pregnancy, which she still isn't showing yet. And that's really bizarre to me. Like, I was looking a couple of times and I'm like, I don't see no kind of belly sticking out there, so I'm not sure how long it has been, but, you know, I mean, some women just don't show. Maybe that's good old Mags, but hey. And then we also get to see her with Sasha and Jesus, and the three of them kind of converge against Gregory, who is just an utter nonsensical excuse for a human being. The fact that people like that continue to exist astonishes me. But it's also kind of fun to see how he tries to come to terms with the presence of Maggie and Sasha at the Hilltop community, and when he actually hands over his apple to Maggie when she's up at the lookout post, eyeballing that tasty cord fruit. And she's like, hey, give me that. And he gives it up, so maybe there is some progress to be made with that man. But I fully expected in the Hilltop-centric episode that he was going to bite the dust. And he did not, but it was really fun to watch him kind of snivel before one of the numerous Negans. If I'm not mistaken, one of Negan's right hand men. That guy has got such a distinctive look and that handlebar mustache, and just the crazy about him is pretty on par with Jeffrey Dean Morgan's version of crazy. Just a little less Joker-esque and more like, I'm a crazy son of a bitch who could kill you at any moment. And there is some of that quality to Negan as well, but he also has that kind of mustache twirling James Bond villaininess about him. And like I said, very Joker-esque as well. So Gregory sucks hard, and he knows that he is a sad excuse for a leader. But then you got guys like Jesus, who's all, no, I'm not a leader. Like, that's not what I do. But he clearly has the vision and the drive to get stuff done, and he's kind of able to help ultimately ferry Daryl out of the Savior's compound, and he is free at last, which is very exciting. Now, something that's interesting is a lot of people were speculating that Daryl had actually had his tongue cut out, because we kept glimpsing him and he was completely unable to speak every single time. But clearly he was just internalizing and waiting for his moment, which is stunning given the amount of torture that he endured. But ultimately, was it Dwight, you think, that helped break him out of the clink, or, you know, maybe Dwight's former wife, or, yeah, not exactly sure. But I feel like the season was kind of priming us to see someone like Dwight be willing to help the Alexandrians. He is having his faith in Negan's system shaken by the fact that he's had to cede his relationship with the woman that he loves and watch Negan lord over her and basically get to assert his sexual dominance, and it's pretty gnarly stuff. But anyways, I was talking about the Hilltop, so speculation is that maybe Maggie is going to ultimately take over there, and that's going to be her new homestead. And I think that maybe there's something that mirrors in the comics as well. But all in all, pretty decent stuff. And then, of course, we have The Kingdom, which was freaking amazing. And I was so sad that we only got to spend one episode there. And there was just enough time for us to get up to speed on what's going on with Carol and Morgan. And good Lord, is Ezekiel just my favorite human being on the planet. Of the new characters that we have been introduced to this season, I have to say that Ezekiel, and I know that we met Jesus last time, but I'm really enjoying those two for sure. I can't wait to see more of Ezekiel and how he responds to the idea of forming a coalition to finally take down the Saviors and bring them the hell that they have been propagating across the eastern seaboard. So yeah, very, very cool glimpse at the kingdom that he's operating and his backstory that he shares with Carol, that moment of complete transparency where he reveals, you know, that he used to be this zookeeper and rescued this tiger and was ultimately able to create this whole mythology about himself so that he could lead, he could be an example and a pillar of hope to his people. And now he is also having to kiss the feet of Negan and is willfully doing so in order to protect his people. But it's like, I forget what the name of that guard, soldier, whatever you want to call that guy who came to Morgan and Carol, whatever his name is. I think that he's on to something to say that someday the Saviors could very well thwart the deal and just completely dishonor it, and then everything goes to hell, and everything that they have worked to maintain will fall. So yeah, very fascinated to see how things will go with Ezekiel, but I wish I had a friend like him, someone to just bring me delicious fresh fruit and produce to my door on the regular. Like, who needs a farmer's market when you got the king of the kingdom bringing you his choicest fruits? What a guy. What a guy. So there's that. And then we also got an interesting one-off episode with Tara as well and the women of Oceanside. Now, I'm kind of completely crazy, because at the beginning of that episode, and as soon as we found out that this particular community was comprised of all ladies, I thought, dude, they're like some anti-male cult, and they just like kill every man. But then again, they just kind of kill everybody, and we come to discover that every male over the age of 10 was taken and executed by the Saviors, and so this is why they have completely secluded themselves. And apparently it's not that they don't want to have men join them, it's just that there were none left. And now here they are as this, for now, self-sustaining unit that was somehow able to get out from under Negan's all-encompassing thumb. So I also scratch my head at that, and I would scratch it even further if we were to never see this group again. But I think it's distinctly possible that they could maybe come for the final showdown against the Saviors or somehow be connected to that. But, I mean, it all pretty much depends on Tara at this point. Unless something that she said to Natanya or Cindy, was that the name of the girl who she befriended? You know, unless she really plants that seed and it blossoms into a desire to fight back. But a lot of people have been totally brutalized and demoralized by Negan's reign. And generally all the different leaders of these groups that we have seen have bent the knee before him and have been willing to join the program, because what else is there? Their numbers are so massive, evidently, and I'm curious to see whether, joining the forces of potentially Oceanside. I know that that's kind of left field, but you've got Oceanside, Alexandria, Hilltop, the Kingdom. Is that gonna be enough? Like, I would hate to see all of these cool little human ecosystems, as it were, completely fall apart. But if that's what it ultimately takes to destroy Negan, and I'm sorry, that is a garage door. There are just all the sounds in the world going right now. I wish I had a soundproof room. But anyways, so this could be yet another dawn of a new era for all of these groups and these survivors who are trying to find some kind of a life that's going to make sense for the next generation. That's something that Michonne ends up bringing up to Rick. And I do like the idea that her speech that she gave was kind of an impetus towards Rick finally saying, okay, I'm a man up, I'm a pony up, and we are going to get things done at long last. Because Rick is, he is a man broken, to be sure. And he took the loss of Glenn and Abraham incredibly hard, and then almost losing his son as well. It all makes sense on some level, but it's good to see that all of the individual anxieties that have been populating these different groups and have been driving everyone towards making these dangerous and irrational decisions, that finally everyone can stop going behind each other's backs and try to forge these partnerships. So I think that we have a pretty exciting future ahead of us. I would love to know your thoughts in the interim, and hats off to Jeffrey Dean Morgan for having the most possible fun in this villainous role. He chews the scenery like he has got all friggin' canines and sizers just tearing in. It's absolutely ridiculous. And it continues to be a source of terror and comedy, but I'm at a point where I'm less afraid of him than I used to be. And it seems at times that maybe he puts on more airs than he actually does incredibly vicious things, which I know it sounds very strange to say after what we witnessed him doing in the premiere, but he's never followed it up with an equally heinous act. And there have been these moments of, I don't know if it can ever be said that he's truly been humanized, but at times we find ourselves lulled into a false sense of security around him and are inclined to laugh and kind of go along with his antics as anyone who he confronts would. And it's utterly absurd and fear-inducing and sometimes just outright bizarre, but it has been a source of entertainment quite unlike anything else I have witnessed in the past. So those are my thoughts at this point. I'd love to hash it out with you more in the comments. Thank you all for being so patient for this review. Love you so dearly. Got some new content coming in the future. Check out my new PC build video, which I just uploaded the other day. I now have a very fancy computer that I'm going to start working with in the not too distant future. So cool stuff is coming. I will be back with either episode by episode or another mid-season review of The Walking Dead. So you guys take care. And as always, I will be back before you know it.